Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Black Advancement. I am your host slash moderator, Ajiman Jasante Goodman. On the screen, I have with me today Maurice Franklin, Greg Goodman, Takara Mosley, and the newcomer, Jeremy Styles. What's up, baby?
Good.
Hey, it's not your time to talk, man. I'm just playing. Anyway. I was just joking, man. Just ease the tension, baby. Just ease the tension. Anyway. Before we get into the topic for today, let me tell you what Black Advancement Incorporated is all about. Black Advancement Incorporated is a nonprofit organization that looks to combat the problems within the Black community through action and dialogue. Now, with all that being said and out of the way, let's get to the front street and the topic. One of the most significantly singular events to ever happen within America's history was the breaking down of the color barrier through a decree that all but mandated all people of all colors were free to go and do whatever they pleased. Everything from education to restaurants and even employment had become open to an entirely new segment of the population who had previously been denied their inalienable rights to do many of the promised freedoms and pursuits of happiness within the land of the free. However, not everyone was so keen on this sudden switch and reacted as any country who felt they were being invaded would react, violently. They fought physically, legally, politically, and every other way possible to slow integration and to shield their loved ones from the effects of having to be around people who they previously deemed unworthy. Through all the efforts of both Black people who have tried to integrate and white people who wanted things to continue as is, the question remains to this very day of whether integration has helped in the destruction of the Black community or not. So, with that being said, in the introduction of the topic, I'll go into the first question. Do you believe integration was ever implemented into American society? Why or why not? And I will start with Maurice.
All right. Well, thank you. No, I don't think it was properly, I guess, introduced or really implemented into American society. I think that there was an attempt initially, and then I think once the anger and the tension happened from, in large part, other communities, I think from really both communities, Black and white, I think that America kind of took a step back from that and didn't necessarily push as hard to fully integrate everything. And I think that was apparent in the ability to allow, redlining and I won't say white flight, but white flight, and I think what else? I don't know, and other things I guess that occurred that kind of really still increased separation that was there before. Yeah, I think that's all I got
for now. Okay, that's cool. Just because you peed it out, man. You just let your point overwhelm you.
Yeah.
Takara, go ahead.
Oh, I mean, I would say on the surface, we look like we're an integrated country, but we all know, from living here that it's not integrated, not fully, due to, social injustice, inequities, inequality. I mean, yeah, the list could go on. Like you say, I mean, they just found other ways to keep us still suppressed and oppressed. So, I mean, it's not even, separate but equal. Don't know how you would term it. It's integration, but we're still not afforded the same freedoms as everybody else. So I mean, is it integration on the surface? Yes, but once you scratch the surface and really think about our lives, we're not treated the same. So
Greg.
Oh, yes. I believe it was 100% implemented, but it was implemented on bad terms, which means the way it was negotiated out is in order for us to integrate within the rest of society, so to speak, we had to lose a lot of our things that made our communities great. So all the mom and pop stores, all that stuff, yeah, things were integrated, but those things ended up being lost out, and Black business ended up being lost out because of integration. And now you've integrated schools, and now it's a clear indication that the school systems that we're in now is against young Black people, in particular young Black men, because now you're being taught by people who hate you and don't want you there anyway. So it makes it that much more difficult. So, like I said, things did integrate. We were allowed to do certain things, but that just left us under even more scrutiny with the ideal of equality. So we got what we wanted, but we lost what we needed, so to speak. So we were integrated, but it was a bad deal.
Okay.
So to speak, in my opinion. That's all I've really got to say.
Okay. Jeremy.
All right. Y'all hear me?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah, I think integration was implemented into American society. I don't think that really can be denied, at least on the surface level. But I mean, there's so many communities, my own community, my neighborhood. I mean, there's Black, white, Asian, of all different ethnicities. Same with my job. I think throughout American society, there's a lot of integration. But of course, there's an argument to be made how much it worked. There was definitely some cons as well as some pros. But yeah, I mean, throughout in business, school, and like I said, just in people's regular lives, you can see integration has taken place. Shoot, I mean, we had President Obama, who's the product of a interracial marriage that couldn't have taken place, or an interracial relationship. They were married, right? It couldn't have taken place without there being some level of integration. So.
Well, I have a question for everybody. Like, so when we're talking about integration, in your ideal, like in an ideal sense, what do you think that they meant by integration? Like, what do you think that they actually were getting to? Because I think that a lot of you guys have touched on the idea of it being a surface level thing, which I won't take by the moderator's rights and go into my own my own descriptions of what I think of it is right now. But I wanted to see what everyone else's idea of an ideal integration would have been in terms of us integrating within America and making it one society.
Well, I think we had unrealistic expectations. I think that I think society, I don't think that it was fully understood how people were going to react. And I think that there were some unrealistic expectations as far as, okay, well, since everybody can live wherever they want or go to school wherever they want, work wherever they want, then everything is cool. But I don't know if we fully gauged how people were going to respond. Like, I know they knew some people were not going to be happy about it. Like, that's definitely not a surprise. But I do think that they were in some ways surprised that there were large portions of communities that were okay. They were like, okay, well, we can do this. We'll make this happen. We can work with it. But I do think, again, still in large part, the expectations that we had for what integration was actually going to do for America was really unrealistic. Like, it wasn't going to be a kumbaya situation after 50 years, even 150 years. I think it is going to take some time for us to get used to one another and figure out how each other live, what each other's norms are. And I think over time, we will be able to get there to a more harmonious kind of living situation.
Do you really think that people were shocked by how some of these people reacted to it? Because I don't think they were. I think that they got exactly what they thought was. Let me not go into that, but yeah, go ahead.
I think it depends. I think some places, yeah, people got, the reaction was exactly what they thought it was going to be. And then other communities were a little bit more open to it. Like, there wasn't as much of a kickback as I think they anticipated, or it didn't last as long as they thought it would. But like I said, I don't think it's a blanket everywhere. It was like, absolutely not. We don't want this. There's no way. But yeah, that's my opinion on it.
Anyone else before I go to the guy on the couch?
Hold on. The question is, what was the question again? Was it what
What?
you thought the ideal of
Yeah,
integration?
yeah. What is your ideal idea of what integration is supposed to be? Like,
Okay.
I think because I think a lot of people will say, well, you know, society was integrated. For instance, right? And I was trying to hold back on this, but I'm gonna go ahead and go in on it. Yeah, that's right, Takara. I said it. So
I mean, it's no need. I'm like, don't hold back.
no. I was just gonna wait. I was gonna wait until the comments. Everyone else had commented, but long story short, like, so my idea of what integration is not what we see right now. Like, I understand that you can go to school technically with other kids, but they basically just made rules to get around that. They made private schools to get around that. They made these what are these schools called? The one that Coney runs. They made this charter schools, you know, to get around stuff like that. They made a bunch of different, and it's like that in every single avenue, and it's always been like that. I mean, like, the thing that really bugs me about everything that goes on with America is that they don't realize that when they're taking rights away from us, when they're preventing us from doing something, when they do something to spite Black people, it ends up always coming back to spite, you know, them too. It hurts everybody except for people who are really, really rich. And it's like, the sooner people understand that, the better off they'll be. But they don't do that. Like, for instance, unions were created, although we all probably in one way or another like the idea of a union. Unions were created to stop Black people who were had all these skills and were entering the workforce after slavery. So they had to make sure that white people could stay into some of these jobs. So I mean, like, you know, like that kind of thing is their idea of integration. You understand what I'm saying? Like, and that's not my idea of integration. Like, schools to me weren't never fully integrated. You can go to any school, you know, somewhere in New York or in New Jersey or whatever, and all the bad schools have people who look like me, and all the good schools have people who don't look like me. You know, so like, I don't understand that's a generalization, but you see where I'm getting at.
Right, like you say, they find a way, they find a loophole, they find a way to a backdoor way to keep people oppressed. They just will make a new avenue to keep people out, to change the rules, change the bar, you know, raise the bar. They will, you know, change it's like they won't give us a level playing field. They would just find a way around it, whether that's high taxes to keep people out of their neighborhoods.
Right.
Even when they go to gentrify downtown areas or poor areas, they get rid of all the poor people. And then now is, you know, they take over with their culture and their businesses and their, you know, and then Black people can't make businesses in those areas that their poor homes were in, where they were living, because now white people have taken over and said this belongs to us now. So this new set of playing rules that you can't attain, and we aren't going to let you in. I mean, they will find a way to make a loophole and change the rules where it's like, okay, well, we are going to keep these people out because we don't want them in. And so even rich Black people can't get in because those rich Black people do not have the same kind of wealth, and people don't realize that. I mean, you guys talked about sports, didn't you already? I wasn't on that call, but you know, this is why you don't have Black owners in the NFL. They have made, though, you have to have so much money to be able to own a team. And Black people don't have it. You cannot put several Black people together. You need so many Black people to be able, you would need like Oprah, Diddy, you know, you need more people. You would need so many Black people to like put their money together to own a team. But there are single owner white people who come along and can own a team. So if the bar is way up here, they have the control to make it where you don't have a seat at the table. So it's like, we don't care about integration. It's not really going to affect us.
I just feel like the idea of integration, they wouldn't have implemented it unless they found a way to benefit from it. That's
what I'm saying. The idea of integration, I think that Martin Luther King and everyone else that was in that struggle had in mind, where they assume, I think what they were assuming is that everything, they got integration confused with equality at that point. So they thought if you were intermixed in at these good schools, they would have a certain amount of Black teachers and a certain amount of Black students and all these other things, and the government that allocates the money from the taxes, a certain amount would go to these neighborhoods and that neighborhood. And that was their idea. I believe that would happen with integration, but it didn't happen. That's why I said we did integrate, but it was a bad deal. We expected people to do the right thing once the integration started. So we didn't ask for all of the things that we actually needed.
But you're trying to implement integration to a people in a country that was built on, the idea of slavery and oppression. They never intended for us to be better. So when you talk about education, okay, we're going to have the Black people in the school, but then we don't have any power to control what goes on in those schools. So they can still segregate us within the school where Black people are not getting the same education. We're only being indoctrinated with white education and white history. And we have, those Black kids will not be getting the same quality of education because you're being taught by people who don't care about you to begin with. I do believe that has changed and progressed as time went on, but we do know that, Black children got, the older books and, or they didn't get the books at all, so yeah, you were there at that school, but they made it clear that you didn't belong here. And we're just doing this because the law says we have to, but they can't control what we do inside this school.
Is that as widespread though as we're kind of making it seem? Because I in everywhere that I think I've lived in the last 15 years, 20 years, or even to some degree visited, it's been a mixed society. It's not just been a whites only neighborhood or community or county or city or whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
It's been integrated. It's been just a bunch of different people living there. And even
go ahead, Maurice.
Even in Virginia, in various neighborhoods, in your Tysons and McLean and parts of Loudoun County and in Maryland and all these other places, they're integrated. Like there aren't many white only like areas like where there's just like absolutely not, you all can't come in. I know in the South it's probably different. There are probably places where Black folks are like, nah, I'm good. But even I think still to some degree there, it's still pretty integrated. Now, I think you do have instances where, yeah, you're going to have wealthy white folks who don't want to be around anybody. They don't want to be around poor white folks. Like that's not nothing to do, I think, with us as far as being Black or being minorities. They don't want to be around poor people. They don't want to see poor people. They want to be in their homes and their communities with only folks that are like them, which is cool because I don't really want to be around them either because they're not normal people. I'm talking about wealthy people. Like crazy wealthy people are really are weirdos to me, so yeah.
Let me jump in on what you're saying, Maurice. I think what you're actually saying is in a middle class society, integration has somewhat worked. It's when you get to the top of the top, it doesn't work, and at the bottom, it doesn't work.
Absolutely.
I don't
all the things like the poorest of the poor, for some reason, seem to be extremely racist. I don't understand why. We're all in the same boat.
So
and the elite, it's more of it's a racism with a dash of
elitism,
classism, hookups. Like they know the right people, they know the people that you're supposed to know. And that's another reason why we thought integration would work, because we thought that if we actually get within the system, we can thrive within the system. But there's also the system within the system, which means I don't care how much you know, these are the people I know who I'm comfortable with. So you're only going to get but this far because you don't have the other connections.
No NFL owners. There's NBA owners. And
NBA. Well, there's a NBA owner.
There is a NBA owner. And if y'all have seen the story of Al Davis, just real quick, and then I know Jeremy.
I have not. I heard good things about it though.
It's crazy how he became.
No,
I'm just saying.
He fully put it his way in the door.
Yeah, how he became an owner. He was a player. He was a normal salaried person like us. He was a normal dude and ended up owning a team. That's all I'm going to say.
We'll digress. Jeremy, go ahead, man.
Yeah,
Jordan, go ahead.
I was just going to say in response to I think it's Frank, my man at the bottom here,
Oh, it's great.
Greg,
Greg,
he looks like a Frank. I'm just kidding.
No, he just.
like a boss, man, like a straight boss, man. That when we're saying it didn't work, and then we point to these examples of the super wealthy, and there's not much representation, if any, Black folks at that level. But then we talk about the middle class. To me, that demonstrates that integration has been working, maybe not as quickly as we'd like, but there wasn't a Black middle class the way it's perceived today when integration first started. I think that Dr. King and others expected for it to take some time. And I think it has been going in fits and starts. And that's why we have the type of communities we have in certain parts of the country now, where, like Maurice just talked about, where there's plenty of communities in the DMV area, at least, where it's completely normal to see it integrated with different races. And just one other point with the definitely there's racism, all that type of stuff. I'm not trying to argue against that, but we're talking about how white people have not wanted to be around Black people, but in reality, that is part of it. That's definitely a part of it. There's a lot of Black folks that don't want to be around white people.
That's correct.
either.
That's true.
No, and what I was saying about the whole thing with the middle classes, I was saying that's the only place where it has actually worked.
Well, yeah, well, it's work, but all I'm saying is,
what the aim was for it to work across the board.
well,
And that's what I'm saying. It didn't work.
I got you there. And I think
I'm not saying it
it is
doesn't
for
work
it to
in
work
some
across the, I think the aim is, yeah, I agree with you. The aim is for it to work across the board. What I'm saying is, I think we are building towards that. We're just not there. Even the stuff talking about sports owners and teams and us not having the knowledge that some of these people have. It wasn't that long ago, as far as I can tell, Black folks were even talking about ownership in the way that we hear Black folks talking about
It wasn't
ownership.
even long ago they were allowed to be in the league in general, let
Yeah, well,
alone think about owning a team.
all that is, we're building towards that. It does take.
Let me correct you on that one thing. I think we were building on that, and now we're going back to digressing on that
Because
of the sudden change in attitude. Once Obama became president, then that's when racism started to show itself again in a vocal way, not an underground, we kind of secretly feel this way kind of way. And then once Trump got in, it's full blown. So now we've taken a couple of steps back. So now it's going to take a more time to get to where we were.
I think that's an interesting point.
We're working on getting back to where we were before now.
But you're saying
it's still going to take more time. We'll eventually get there because we're going to have to.
But you're saying the racism got it more vocal, but you're saying the racism did already exist. It's just they're more vocal about it now.
Oh yeah, now it's more open, and now because it's more open, now you're going to see the younger generation of some of these people that weren't so vocal before. Now they're seeing their parents do it, and now that translates and passes on.
Yeah,
But
people are more vocal, but do you believe that there people are any more racist than before? Like, do you think there's actually any more? You think there's more racists now than there were before?
No, I think there are people that weren't exactly racist before that have heard this rhetoric and now are racist based on the rhetoric that they've heard. They've changed their minds. They've come to see things in a different light.
But do you think people
based
on the fence
things that they heard?
But do you think people on the same fence went the other side too? They were like, yeah, this stuff is, you don't think so? You think people either stayed on the fence or went full blown racist? And you don't think there's a group of people that went to the other side as well?
I think there's some that went on the other side that were just very neutral, but those people were never really vocal either way. I think that they've understood that, okay, I see that is bull crap. They kind of got a point here. You know what I'm saying? But the people that went to the other side are very vocal about it, is the difference. So the people that went on the side of non-racist, they just understand that these things are racist and they're not champions for anti-racism. But the people that went on the racist side are champion for racist things.
I think those folks have always been there. They just haven't had a voice.
Let me go ahead.
Help me understand, how is them being more vocal about the racism keeping Black people from continuing to ascend of this economic ladder, though, because if they were already racist and now they're just being more vocal about it, what specific actions have happened since 2008 that pushed us back when we were advancing up till then?
Well, I can get into that, but let me go to the website first. Guy on the couch, what you got?
All right, question number one, do you believe that integration was ever implemented into the American society? Thad Senior says, I believe that integration from a legal perspective has been partially implemented. However, the full intent of integration is still overshadowed by white privilege. The course of true anything does not run smoothly. This is evident by the sublime nature of white privilege as seen across the spectrum of our society. You see it in bank loans, housing, school choice, police behavior, job opportunities, and quote unquote Karen actions. Integration is desirable and necessary, but equity and equality should be the goal. And the race for equality has no finish line. Back to you.
All right, I was about to answer. Yeah, he said Karen action.
He said Karen. Okay, I didn't know. I was
Karen
like, did he say CARE Act or Karen actions? Okay.
He said Karen action. Jeremy, I was about to shoot back, but I noticed Takara's face right before it, and she seemed like she had something to say as well. Takara, go ahead.
No, I mean, just that again, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I have a lot to say, so I shouldn't say no. But it's just, you know, I mean, maybe I should have prefaced with that, you know, perhaps integration, you know, was an effort for Black people to gain equality. But I think, you know, the guy on the couch, that quote that we got was a good one. That statement is a really good summary that, yes, we have integrated on the surface, but the social injustice has not changed. So really, how has integration helped if we are still suppressed and oppressed and marginalized by all of these, you know, different, they just change the rules. They find a way, you know. I mean, and as I talk, I was more so even thinking about the historical perspective. And, you know, I understand that you guys are talking about, like, you know, we made some progress over the years, but like, I mean, if you think about it, is that acceptable that we have been waiting nearly 70 years because schools were integrated in what, 54?
Yep.
It's 2021. That's not a lot of progress to think over 70 years, this is where we are today.
But I think to a degree, if you look at us, though, the five of us here on this panel, I don't know where everybody was raised and born and all that stuff, but I'm assuming it was somewhere in between the lower middle class and middle to upper middle class, somewhere in the middle class realm. But even still, because to some degree of integration, all of us went to a school with a bunch of different people. Now, in the 40s or the 50s, would that have been possible for our parents? Would our parents, if you cloned our parents in our entire situation, but took it back to the 50s, would our parents have been able to raise us in the same neighborhood? Most cases, you can say, no, they would not have been. But to some degree, because of the integration that happened, they were able to raise us in the environments that they wanted to live in, which at that point we were allowed to or able to go live in mixed race societies. We're able to communicate and really deal with anybody we come across. And we've had that ability to be in that kind of middle class school system, which may or may not have helped us get to where we are today. So I completely agree that it's not perfect. Like there are definitely some foul things that happen to systemically keep us down or to keep us disadvantaged. But at the same time, integration in itself still happened. And I don't remember who said it, but you said it perfectly. Integration happened, but I think some people got that confused with equality. And those are two different things.
You know what I think happened? I think desegregation happened. I don't think integration happened.
Fair enough.
That's the way I look at it. And just to get back to the idea of, like, I understand that these individual racists with Trump flags running around isn't necessarily going to stop me from owning a business. I get that. I understand that. But they vote people in who do. They vote people in who will take away our voting rights. They vote people in who will make it more difficult for us to be able to go to the polls and get the things that we want done or accomplished. They make it more difficult for us to just live a basic life. Like that happens. I understand that politics can be local and this, that, and the third, but I was just having a conversation the other day, well, I can just say it with Maurice. I mean, like about like how politics plays out in some of these states and in some of these areas, and in how you have this huge swath of population of people of color, people of this and that, and you still have, not to pick on the Republicans, but you still have the Republican Party winning these seats, and they don't have any, what's the right word I'm going to say? They don't have any cares for anybody except for, at least in my opinion, their donors, which are all rich 1% corporations, so on and so forth. But the people who vote them in are just like me and you, right? You know what I mean? But they get played and they get tricked into this whole idea of colorism, and they get played into all that stuff. So you can change legislation, you can't change people's hearts. So I say that we did not integrate, we just desegregated. And that explains why the schools can be kind of mismatched where, yeah, sure, I went to school with a white kid named Bradley or something. Yeah, sure, I did. Yeah, that's a little bit better, I suppose. I mean, that's another question for another thing. Is it better that we integrate outside of the resources? Was it better that we integrated? Because when we integrated our schools, the black principal went over to the other school and they became the janitor. Like they were the principal before. Like, is that better or worse for us? I mean, like I'm not really sure how we're supposed to view stuff like that, you know? And that's just from talking to people who had lived through it. They were like, you know, my favorite math teacher didn't get hired when they integrated schools. They had to go find another job. And it's like, I didn't even think about that. Like when I thought about integrating schools, I never thought about the faculty of the black school. Like, I thought about what they were doing.
Yeah, I thought about all of those things when they integrated, because like I said, we did integrate, but it was not on our terms. They said, sure, your kids can go to this school and you can come shop here, but it left all the things that were black owned, it left those things to die. You know what I'm saying? Like all those jobs that were in the black community for certain things, because it's not like there was a regiment of some sort of affirmative action back then. That's the reason why we have affirmative action now, because even when you integrated, they kept the same policies for the most part. You were just allowed to walk in there and be treated like dirt instead of being treated like dirt on the outside. You know what I'm saying?
It wasn't like there was
a whole thing where they were hiring blacks and hiring and looking out for black students and encouraging black students and all these other things. You were just kind of there.
But I guess my question to that point is, as far as about the businesses, why did we as a community decide, you know what, now that we can shop at this grocer, we're going to go there instead of the one that was black owned? Like, why did? I don't think that's not on white folks. That's on us. We made that decision.
That's a fair thing to say, Maurice. But at the same time, I think that when you have our leadership class pushing so hard for integration because what we believe we have is inferior, that would lead you to believe that maybe our businesses are inferior too, right? Like, so I'm not saying I can't say that 100%. But if me and you only had access to hoe cakes, like the whole time, like Hostess hoe cakes or something, and then something they made it open to where we could get other things besides hoe cakes. Hoe cakes still might taste great to us, but the fact that they allowed it, they said, oh, well, now it's open to this. We might say, oh, this is automatically better because it's something that we couldn't have before.
And maybe so, but I can't blame them for that though. That's on us. We made that decision.
I'm blaming you, Maurice. I blame you.
No, hold on. So there is definitely so let's not forget that things can be socialized. And you may not realize that it's happening, but it's happening. They can control people by media. You can control people's behavior. There is something called, positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement. Those things are very real. You don't realize they're happening, but they are. This is why we have colorism. This is why, we have these things in, where, people, like what IG is saying is that when you have historically not been able to have access to something, and now that it's open, you are going to want to assimilate. Now, I agree with you. Everybody does not feel that way. Some people have the capacity to march to the beat of their own drum, but unfortunately the masses are going to go where everybody else is going, and people are going to want to assimilate, and people are going to want to go where they historically weren't able to go. And this is, I mean, I could, go into other examples of like, the issue with America and all these like tougher gun laws and all these other things, these things are disproportionately affecting Black people. This don't have anything.
But how does that, I guess, how is that, what I'm still trying to figure out is how is that the fault of anybody except the people who are deciding that they're going to take their business and go shop somewhere else, or they're going to take the money that they get for a home loan and go live somewhere else?
Because the socialization is the positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement.
But if everybody was happy in their own communities, there was still no law that said you have to go now buy a house in a white neighborhood.
No, Maurice, come on, man. Come on, man.
I'm playing devil's advocate here. You're devil's advocate. But still, it's true though. You're talking about, because I understand integration and how you have the ability now to go and live wherever you want or shop wherever you want to a degree. So I don't think, and I don't agree that we could blame white people for Black people's decision to shop somewhere else. Then when you have the demise of some small Black businesses, that's not on white people because they weren't shopping there to begin with. So their business was never accounted for. But Black people were always shopping there because that was the only place they could go. They were familiar with the people, they were part of their community. So now if the Rite Aid across the street is now available for Black people, you can't get mad at white people when Black folks start going to Rite Aid instead of going to their local community person that they've been shopping with for years. That's not on white folks, that's on us.
Right, Greg.
And that's why Black is a big thing.
But that's just not how it works, and that's not how it works, because if you have, again, it's the idea of restricting people, and now they call it the whole fear of missing out. You can miss something you never had. People don't think that you can, but you do. People miss things that they never had because it's the idea of the glamorization of something, and media will control those things for people. But white people have done it for years with, like how IG is talking about, if we have historically been given the scraps and we were not getting the education. So you want those things, and then you're going to assimilate to those things. You want the bigger house, you want the better car, but those things don't equal a happier life or more wealth, but people want those things. It doesn't change that people want those things. So you can create the illusion that all of these things are better and make your life better, and people will still want those things.
But
now, I know what you're saying about that's not blaming people, but yes, it is, because we are still in a capitalistic society that America tries to ignore that they are, but that's exactly what we are. And those things benefit white people. Black people don't make, most of our money, and I believe it's like Kathy Hughes who talks a lot about that. There's a big push to support Black businesses, but the money is still, our dollars are still being spent with white companies.
But that's not on the white company though. What I'm saying is that is on us. I can't be mad at somebody who has never been putting their money into our community. They've never put their money into our businesses. So how am I mad at them if we then take our money out of our businesses and spend it with them? That's on us.
Right.
I can't.
What I'm talking about is restriction. When you have things that are very restricted, when things are you have been denied access. Most people want those things.
Go ahead, Greg.
You're gonna want something that you can't have, and unfortunately, we have been treated like that for years. And years of oppression will definitely, your past does affect your future. People don't like to admit that, but it does. Can it change? Does everybody not think that way? But what do we normally see? Because we have been conditioned to want things that we can't have. We have been. You may have not been. That may not have been, passed down to you, but you are missing that social injustice. When those things, when you wanting, I understand that you're not making a connection, but it's there. Just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not there. It's there.
I'm gonna let Greg have the last word on this, and Mr. Styles, I'll let you start off the second question. All right.
Look, I'm not even gonna say anything that's gonna take that long. Maurice, the thing that you're missing in this whole thing is not even that it's white folks' fault. It's the same reason why Walmart dominates and knocks out all the rest of these small businesses. Pricing is the reason why. That's why Black people, not only they were allowed to go there, but the prices were much cheaper at a Walgreens or something like that because they can buy in bulk over there. So everything's a lot cheaper too. So essentially, it wasn't that these businesses failed because Black people just refused to go there. It's because the products at these other places were a lot cheaper. So they basically got bought out. They got priced out. That's how that worked because it's not the same. So you can go to the corner store up the street and spend twice as much for pears than you do at Walgreens or wherever you're going to shop at. And that's how those
if I'm not
things
getting
happen.
called a nigga to go get the pears, to pay $2, then I'm cool to go there. I'll go pay $2 for the pears as opposed to, dealing with racism and all that other stuff personally.
See, you can say that. Hold on, you can say that because you could afford to do it. If you can't afford to do it, you might take a couple of those N-words so all your kids eat.
But how are those folks getting this stuff from those stores in the first place, though?
And that brings us to the conclusion of question 1. Question 1 of 3. Thank you all for tuning in. If you get a chance to go to our website, which is www.blackadvancement.com. While you're there, you can do things such as go to our research section, hit on our research tab. Our research tab is there for people who want to have a little bit more knowledge before they get a chance to discuss any issues if they wanted to be a part of a roundtable or just leave a comment on the website. We also have a topics tab, which goes into a bunch of the different topics that we discuss here at the Black Advancement and that we seek solutions to. These are all evergreen topics, but evergreen, ever clean, right? Events, COVID. I can keep it moving from there, right? Okay, cool. All right, and also in our in history section where we talk about rare events that happen in history. So I'm going on to question number 2. This one's for you, Mr. Stiles. How do you think America would be fundamentally different if integration never happened?
Man, you gave me the tough one, man.
everyone's got to answer it, but you just get to go first. If you want to skip, you do have that.
No, I won't skip. I
knew you wouldn't.
Yeah. How do you think America would be fundamentally different if integration never happened? Oh man, I think there would be some pros and cons. So the first pro that comes to mind is kind of what we're touching on in the with that last conversation was if integration had never happened, I think that the Black community internally would have continued to grow. I think that by integration happening, we did end up losing some of our most talented people that were most prepared and had the temperament to go out there and put themselves in an integrated situation and were able to thrive. For whatever reason, a lot of them did not come back into the community. And there's multiple reasons. It's not to put any blame on them. But if they were essentially forced to stay among their own Black people, then we may have been able to continue to see businesses grow and everything like that. And I know some may say, well, look at Black Wall Street and all that. So that's why it gets complicated, because other things may have needed to happen in order for us to continue to thrive. But I think you probably would have seen the Black family may have remained more intact than it is now. I think there's a lot of good things that would have happened. On the other hand, if the integration never happened, I don't think people in general be as accepting of each other as they are now. And that doesn't mean that everybody is. Obviously, we still have a lot of people that aren't, but especially for the younger generations, to them, it's nothing to have a Black friend and a white friend and a nation friend, so on and so forth. But if that never happened, we want to have that type of situation. And also it's just some of the knowledge that we've been able to gain by being around people that may have already been able to accumulate knowledge on how to build their businesses and certain things about education we may not have gained, or it would have been more difficult to do so.
Those are all fair points. Greg.
The question was, how do you think things would differ if integration never happened?
We would have been fundamentally different if integration never happened.
To be honest, I'm not really sure. That's a difficult question to answer, because even during the times of integration, we were still the cultural leaders of this country with music, sports, and everything else. So I'm not sure how it would actually be affected. I think there would be, I'm pretty sure if that hadn't happened, then at this point in time, this country would be completely different. Because I think that by then, or by now, Blacks would have been so overly frustrated that there'd be riots and every other week. It would be probably complete and total anarchy at this point. Because it's not like other things will fundamentally change. Even integrated, we're still getting beat up by the police and everything else. And it's still pretty much legal for them to do those things. So if you can imagine if the laws were still softened like they were back in the day, then at this point, by now, this whole country probably would have erupted. Those are the fun differences to me. I think at that point, probably by the early 90s, this place would have been starting to get torn apart. Completely apart.
I mean, I think that when the segregation hurt us in, or integration, I'm sorry, I'm getting my terms all mixed up here. I think that, or desegregation, which is, I mean, some people will argue that you can use those terms interchangeably, but I think the biggest difference for me, I just feel that we lost the sense of community, that idea of, it takes a village. When Black people were segregated and we could only rely on each other, we didn't have other options. And then when other options became open, I believe we, over the years, over the generations, have lost some of that moral fabric. And that has been a detriment to us, to our people, because why that is, we may not agree on, but it has happened. That that idea of like the crabs in a barrel, and like you say, not wanting other people, other Black people to succeed, the whole hating on each other and all of this stuff, it's on to bigger and better. Because a lot of people think that that's what the idea of success is. It's very much linked to what you have, money, material wise, versus health and physical health, mental health, love, community. And now we have gotten further and further away from that. It's so often that we aren't getting along. Neighbors don't talk to each other like they used to. And I mean, I feel like in Black communities, we definitely had that it takes a village. We had that vibe. We really relied on each other. And now it's a lot of separation amongst us. The whole, some people will argue it's the divide and conquer, and the integration contributed to that. I think so.
Maurice.
I agree with Greg, where I think that there would be a lot of fighting. I don't know if we'd have necessarily gotten all the way to like a second civil war.
Don't say
but but I wouldn't be surprised if that had occurred, because I think, like Greg was saying, there was only at some point, really Greg and Takara were saying, if you have communities that are continuously getting abused by a system, and we have a better means of communication, and we're all around each other, and we're constantly having these conversations about it, and people are eventually going to get kind of spooled up to be like, all right, you know what, we're this, something's going to have to change. And then there's going to be small fights initially, and then I think over time they would become larger battles, especially if you're just in a bunch of different separate communities. I also do agree that I think for the Black community, we would have had much stronger communal values. I think we lost a lot of that because some of our best and brightest left the Black communities and went on to go and live in other places. And so I think that we might have seen a lot more. I think we would have seen a faster rise of the Black, I guess, middle class, because I think there would have been a lot there would have been an abundance of examples in large Black communities of what different people can be. And so I think that that would have definitely had its impacts over the last 3 or 4 generations. But I also think that white folks would be, I think they would just be on one even more. I think it's kind of slowed to a degree because they feel like they have to be around us, and not just us, but any other minority. But so I think it's kind of slowed some of their temperament a little bit. So I think that they would have probably been much further off on something else had we remained separated.
I don't think so. Because I think what you're saying is the more we would have ended up thriving and building our own stuff and everything else, without the process of integration and whites and Blacks actually getting to know each other, so it's almost tolerable for us to live together at this point. And I noticed I said almost tolerable. It's almost tolerable for us to live together at this point. Had the Black community started thriving and doing things well, we've seen this story time and time again. You know what happens next.
Absolutely. That's why I said we would probably be in a civil war. Like there would not be, it would not have stayed peaceful for a long time, because I think white folks would have been on one watching, if there was a Tulsa right next to something in West Virginia, and those two counties were right next to each other, communities were right next to each other, them folks aren't going to be happy about looking at a Tulsa, looking over there like, look at them uppity Negroes with their suits and their banks and all this other stuff, and we're over here coal mining or something. Like they're not gonna be happy about that. And so I think that would start a lot of fights.
Yeah,
a lot of fights.
I also think that would have also tried to continue even more so, more intentionally, I should say, try to pin Black people in specific as a permanent underclass, which wouldn't have stood for very long, I think, because you would have had thought leaders, and with the events happening around the world at the same time, where different nations were becoming free and decolonizing, I think Black people would have taken that as a signal of them, their chances to uprise as well and to get free, quote unquote, however you think that means. But I'll go to the guy on the couch to see what other people have been saying from the guy on the couch. What you got, man?
All right, question number 2. How do you think America would be fundamentally different if integration never happened? Earl Robbins says integration never happened, but Black America lost much of its power in the desegregation process. Not only did we lose our schools, we stopped supporting our own culture. We lost our businesses and our economic base. I don't know why we thought the playing field would be fair when history has proven to be just the opposite. We're just now beginning to rebuild our communities. Back to you.
Let's talk about that aspect of it. Like based off of the comments just made, were we wrong for thinking that the process of integration should be fair or would be fair, considering the historical background of the people who we were negotiating with at the time?
Absolutely, we were wrong for thinking that. It was insane for us to think that, to be honest. Like, what in the history of this country would make you think that people who have been putting their foot on your throat for the last 400 years would all of a sudden have a change of heart just because you're neighbors? Wouldn't happen. Doesn't even make sense.
Do you think the alternative though would have been better? Because we knew what we were getting before. And I think that just the possibility of maybe a change was enough to entice people to think, okay, let's give integration a shot.
No,
but I think we knew what segregation, we knew what we were getting with that. There was no surprise when it came to that.
I said the idea of it was solid. I, for one, think that Malcolm X and Elijah Muhammad's idea was much better. If you just give us all the things that you have and leave us to our own bidding, and we'll leave you alone, you leave us alone. We're all under the same umbrella. We just want the equal part. We don't care about the other stuff. I think that would have worked out better if we could have kept that and kept a peace between us, I know it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
But ideally, that would have been the situation to have.
I think that's just as
But it's just
much
unrealistic.
of a fantasy
Both sides are
as
unrealistic.
complete integration.
Like I said, both sides are unrealistic. They're both
Yeah.
unrealistic goals.
I think sometimes that we are guilty of romanticizing what life was like prior to integration. Sometimes it seems easy to think like things were just, we really just had it all together before integration, and then that's like everything just
We
went to
didn't.
crap afterward. Yeah, we really didn't. Like I was just talking to my mother about this whole thing with integration, and she was talking about how her mother, my grandmother, as soon as the schools are able to integrate, she sent her and my aunt straight away to the white school, the integrated school. Those were schools that kids were going to, black kids were going to, were not as strong. They didn't have the same access to resources, which was really hampering us. So I laugh because Mo and I had a conversation where we're going on and on about resources. But anyway, I don't think integration was simply supposed to be, okay, we're integrated and everybody likes each other. I think part of it was just simply so we can have access to some of the things that we previously didn't because they were concentrated in white communities. And I think that actually did help by allowing us to go to better schools and from there go to better, middle school or high school that prepared us to go to better colleges, so on and so forth. Even if we chose to eventually go to HBCUs who were better prepared so that the quality of the HBCUs, so on and so forth, could be better.
Yeah. Like, do any of y'all truly believe that Black people as a whole are worse off than prior to integration?
I'm honestly.
It depends on what you mean
sure.
by worse off.
Just as a whole, as a whole, like
I'm not
everybody in the Black community isn't poor. Everybody, of course, in the white community isn't rich. So as a whole, when it comes to just Black people, do you think we are worse off than before integration happened?
I don't think we're worse off because of integration. I definitely don't think that. I think in some ways, like prior to some of the civil rights advances, you could say maybe the Black family isn't as intact as strong as it was in some ways, but I don't think it's simply because of integration. Like I don't look at integration as being the problem in and of itself. Plus, do we actually want a society do we actually want a segregated society? Period. Is that actually the ideal society?
Well, I think that we never wanted that society in the first place. We were playing off the hand we were dealt as far as that goes. But
I agree with that, but now it's almost like some of us are, and I don't mean just this group, just a lot of our people speak as if that would just be a better situation to be in where,
well,
I don't think that's a good society.
I understand what you mean, Jeremy, but I think that speaks, I think, to more of the disadvantages and the disgust and the way that in the nature of what's been going on now than it does to how things were back then. You know what I mean? And I think that also, as a couple of the commenters have said, I think we just lost a lot of stuff within the integration wasn't a cure-all and it wasn't the thing that broke Black America. But I mean, like the idea of, for lack of a better phrase, the Americanization of Black people. The idea that we no longer are a communal society of people, the progression of the idea of get your own, the idea of get yours above everything else. I think that's
an American value, though. That's an American.
I understand, but we've never been treated as Americans, though.
I mean, what do you mean we have never been treated? What do you mean by that? Because it's different experiences for different Black folks.
I understand. Right? I'm speaking in general terms. Of course, I'm not saying like Audie's never been treated as I'm not going to say that. But I'm saying like as a whole, I think that Black people we haven't been given the full inalienable rights of America ever. Like if you want to say that Black people have been a part of America, you could start with 1965, maybe. You could. I mean, if you really wanted to, and that's if you're stretching it. That's before Rodney King. That's before when they bombed the joint in Philadelphia. That's before a whole bunch of stuff happened. Like, I mean, we could go on and on for days about that, like, literally. But I mean, it's neither here or there. I think that it's a hard question for me to answer, because I understand there are benefits to it. Specifically, the biggest benefit was the ability to gain access to resources. And for instance, like, you know, if you were to work for certain corporations or certain government entities and things like that, will we necessarily, if the society was separated, will we have necessarily been able to get those jobs? I don't know. You know what I mean? And that's something that has also helped out the Black community, because a lot of Black people work for the government, the federal government. Like, a lot of Black people.
A lot of Black people work for the federal government.
Yeah, a lot of Black people do. And
Black people
that also speaks to how private corporations don't hire.
Like, literally, Black people
You know what I'm
literally
saying?
work for the government. Like, since the beginning of this, we've always been there. We fought in the Civil War.
We've always been federal employees. We just weren't always paid.
We've always been there. It sound like it's something new.
I'm sorry.
I hear you.
Okay.
But to Aj's point, he's correct. Like, corporate America isn't hiring Black people at the same rate as the federal government is. I think the federal government is probably the largest employer of Black and brown people.
It is.
Which is wild, because there's way more private sector jobs than there are federal jobs, and yet
they don't want to hire you, bro.
We don't get hired.
Get out of here. You think that resume? Get out of here.
But that's also been what has grown the Black middle class, is that federal employee work. And that's why you have places like PG County, where, you know, you have the most affluent Black community in the country, just right outside of DC, where a lot of federal jobs are.
Yep.
Even with all of that success, even with all of that success and affluence in that Black community in PG County, the school system is still poor. When right across, you know, when you go right across the line into Montgomery County, where the white folks is, their public school system is far.
And so why is
schools? I don't know. You tell me, because y'all don't think that social conditioning today. Y'all think integration works. So you tell me why it's different. You tell me why it's different.
Well, I just know from my own personal experience, the behavior of the kids at those schools, and I was a part of it, is not conducive.
Kids at what schools?
In PG County schools. In PG County.
Okay.
It's not conducive to having a good learning environment.
Hold on, man.
What's that?
It's because it's where the money is allocated to. The money's not allocated to those schools in PG County. It's allocated to the kids in Montgomery County.
Yeah, what I'm talking about. So what?
Get a better quality of teacher, which means you get a better quality of school, a better quality of equipment.
Well, I can tell you from now. I mean, I graduated in 01. So I mean, but I suspect that it's not much different from what I hear and what I read today. It wasn't a matter of the equipment wasn't good enough, and that's why the students were behaving the way that they were. It had nothing to do with it. We had good computers. The books were fine. It wasn't. That had nothing to do with it.
I mean, there's more that goes into a student than just what shows up at the class. Like there's
this started far before that child became a problem in the school.
Sure. I'm just speaking to the point. I'm just speaking to the point.
School to prison pipeline. When children misbehave, Black children are seen as a problem and need to be punished, where white children are seen as, oh, now little Bill needs help and he has access to other he has access to, that child is not penalized.
But do the schools
the way
in PG County have a bunch of white teachers or Black teachers?
And again, we have been conditioned to think that niggas don't act right, so they don't deserve better.
Yeah, I mean, well, Mo just said it. That's a great question.
But it doesn't have to
like there was
start.
a bunch of white teachers in the school. I mean, all the teachers were Black. It wasn't like all the kids their parents were in prison or the kids were getting locked up. Kids were just wilding out, not listening, smoking in class. I mean, it was crazy.
But what IG is talking about is those
The
kids
same
don't
thing
just
happens
show
in
up in
high
school
schools, though.
smoking weed. There are things that happen prior to that child was in
Sure.
school acting
But-
out, smoking weed. And again, it's the access to the resources. When you have younger kids, I mean, we can talk about autism and ADHD and oppositional defiant disorder and the way that Black children are again, is disproportionately diagnosed with, you know, these disorders, and they are basically segregated, put on IEPs. These children are basically seen as problem children, and they end up in jail. Those kids don't get the same services that white children get. It's that
And the
school to
same-
prison pipeline, which disproportionately affects Black people. People have to understand, we can't keep blaming ourselves for things that have really been placed upon us. We don't get the same
It's not
access to
necessarily
help.
blaming ourselves, but we
Do we-
also,
do
to
we bear-
some degree, have to take responsibility for some things. I'm not saying everything is our fault, because there are definitely
I don't know.
outside
When your
forces that
immediate
influence.
needs, hold on, stop.
Hold on,
Because
hold
when
on.
you
There-
talk
there's a-
about,
there's a
when
different
it
level of
comes to
punishment.
immediate needs, and you have disproportionately, again, I keep using that word, disproportionately, Black people are in more poverty. Their immediate needs are not met. You don't see, you know, success in your neighborhoods. You don't, and I didn't even grow up that way. So I'm advocating for things
Hold
that
on,
I
hold on.
didn't
So
experience in my
but
life.
you're talking about in general. We're talking about right now.
I'm talking about in general.
Listen, hold on. We're talking about PG County right now. That was
Yes.
where we started this conversation. And again, PG County is the most affluent Black county in America. So where the question is how does that happen? How does their school system get so bad? How these kids aren't coming from broken homes. These kids are coming, it's true. Look,
Not
in
all.
every society, listen, wait a
You're
minute,
right,
hold on.
you're right. It's
hold
not
on.
all of them. It's not all of
It's
them.
not, yeah,
But
it's not
but
every
it is,
kid.
But it is
But
a lot of the kids are coming from affluent backgrounds.
I got partners.
Wait a minute.
I got partners in Fort
Hold on,
Washington and
hold
Clinton.
on. You
It's not,
realize?
yes, of course, not the whole
But
we're not
yet-
talking about the
but
county
yet-
as a whole.
But yeah,
That's
we're
the same
still
thing.
having these problems. We talking about an affluent neighborhood. You just said it. You said we talking about an affluent county, and why are the school systems performing poorly? And you saying the kids don't act right. So how do you explain that?
But
The
it's not.
same
But it's
behavior-
not. But
hold on,
explanation
hold
is
on.
the explanation
It's
is
the same
that
behavior
they
in
don't
other
have the
schools
right
with the white
resources.
kids, though.
Exactly. Kids are
It's
going to be
the-
kids
oh, wait a minute.
regardless of what county and what school they're in. I don't
Hey,
care
Greg.
if they're white kids, Hispanic kids, Black kids. Kids act like kids everywhere
Exactly.
at every level.
But
So
they
there is
don't
no
act all. They
difference in the
don't
way
act the
these kids
same.
are
But
acting.
No, they do.
Yes.
will you
They
grant that
absolutely
they don't
do.
act the same everywhere?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly the same.
Absolutely.
Kids is kids.
No, I'm telling you, they don't. I'm telling you, they don't. So
I'm telling you, they do. They do. I've been to school
Yeah.
with white boys that have done ridiculous things.
I-
Ain't nothing. I mean, they still get in trouble, but not like my Black ass would get in trouble.
Okay.
Right. That
But-
is
but-
the
but
difference.
Greg,
And that's
but-
only one part of the problem.
but
Greg
you're
is
talking about
absolutely right. That's only part of the
talking about a school
problem.
with white kids, though. Again,
Those
I'm
kids
trying to
are
go back to
using
this PG
drugs
County
oftentimes
school.
at higher rates than
I
Black
know what you're
kids.
saying
But
about.
guess
hold on,
what?
I'm
They
saying about the
don't,
all
they're
Black
better
schools.
able to hide it because they have the access, they have the tools to be able to hide their drug use.
That I
And to steal
understand.
and do
All right,
those
let me
things.
let me
disputing it
stop.
in a
Wait,
mixed
I'm
environment.
gonna go ahead
Wait a
and use
minute.
my moderator capabilities here, and I'm gonna stop it right here because we
Hold on,
have
let
to
me
go
get
on to
one
question
point across.
3. What?
I'm gonna get one point across though. When he said because this is all happening in a Black school, I'm not saying that my punishment when I was in school with the whites wasn't appropriate. What I'm saying is in those Black schools, everyone's getting the same appropriate punishment that I'm getting. In the white schools, I'm getting the appropriate punishment and they're not. That's the difference.
Can I
Okay.
add one thing?
But that's
Real quick?
understandable,
Real-
though.
real-
Yeah,
just
no,
real
why?
quick. Just real quick. Y'all are talking about the punishment of the children. What I'm saying, the big difference is in a lot of those white schools or even integrated schools, kids studying hard and striving to be the best in the class as far as the grades, those kids don't tend to get made fun of. That's not like frowned upon. And a lot,
Yes, they do. They're called
But in a lot-
nerds.
but
They
it-
pushing lockers and wedgies.
Okay.
it's not like it's not like it is in some.
Hey.
It's not like it is in some schools.
There
in
is
PG
at times stigmas in the Black community
So
for
They don't-
Black people
we
that
all
are
nerds.
that are
What
that
y'all
are
talking about?
So question A,
educationally striving for greatness. There
y'all can see
is
more,
that.
y'all can see more of this great
Zuckerberg
content.
and Bill Gates got no
www.blackadvancement.com. While we're here talking about the website,
sick.
having to talk over panelists. While you're at the website, you can go to our debates tab, which I think you guys have got a pretty good idea what it looks like with different topics and issues that we get into. We also have recommended websites. One of the things that we love to do at Black Advancement is support and promote Black-owned businesses. This time we're going to highlight Janet Lee Jewelry. They've actually been with us the longest. Shout out to Janet Lee out in Houston. Shout out to everybody out in Houston, man. We're hoping everybody doing better out there in Texas, by the way. Let me also highlight one of our other things that we do is we always have a book of the month. The one that we want to highlight for this segment is Stakes is High, Life After the American Dream by Michael Denzel Smith. And with that, you know what we do in this position of the third question. Anybody can go first, whoever feels the spirit. Last question. Did integration work?
We already answered that. It's
And that's our show. Thank you for
Yeah. To answer your question, absolutely not. I don't think it worked. And then I also think I guess I can't say absolutely not, but yes and no. I think our fantasy of what we would have liked, or ideal of what we would have liked in regards to integration, no, we didn't get that. And I don't think we're ever going to see that in America, because America's foundation is racism and slavery, and that is not going away. But at the same time, there have been some benefits to the Black middle class, at least as it pertains to integration. There are still issues to dealing with being in an integrated community, just as there were issues before we were in integrated communities. But I don't think there is, I forgot who said it, but I don't think there is a perfect system for us, because again, our system and our foundation is built on everything being against us. And it's going to take, and if you have 400 years of one thing, it's going to take a lot longer than 50, 60 years of a different action to correct the past 400 years. And so it may take as much or twice as much time, which I don't think America has, but that's neither here nor there. To get to, I don't think we have 800 years as America that we see it. I don't even see another 400 years as America we see it. But again, that's a whole different topic. I think that, for the time that we have had integration, we have made strides. We have improved in some ways. And then, as we all have discussed, we have regressed in other ways, as far as our community, as far as our knowledge of self. All of those things have suffered because we, like Takara said, we've been trying, some of us have been trying so hard to be, I don't want to say to be white, but to be accepted into that community so bad and at any cost that we lost a lot. We've lost so much when it comes to that. So it's a toss-up. Has it worked for us? Yeah. And also for some of us, nah, it hasn't.
It's an interesting question, because you could say when integration started, were Black people prepared for integration? If we already acknowledged that white folks had advantages, they were more educated, business savvy, so on and so forth, you just open the doors and say, okay, here, come in. Which they didn't, but I'm just saying, what I'm getting at is, it's not like we were in a position where we could just flood every school and every business and everything and just perform at the same level. We hadn't been prepared for that because of injustices that had already occurred. But I think what it has done is created the opportunities for more and more of us to be in that position. So I think in that regard, integration definitely has worked. And then just in a broader sense, I think it's worked in making people more accepting of each other. Again, doesn't mean everyone is perfect and accepting of everybody else, but certainly American society is way different than it was in 1960. I think that's pretty obvious, even though we do see a lot of tragedies that take place. It's not like it was 60 years ago before the passage of civil rights and integration got underway.
In my opinion, I kind of agree with Maurice where it has worked, kind of, and it hasn't worked, kind of. But I know the answer is it will never work until white people take accountability for all that they've done in the past.
They
That is
haven't
the
done
only
anything
way-
wrong, man.
How are they supposed to do that though? Because what happens for us if we don't? What if they don't? What if they just don't? Then we're
Then the
just
country's gonna fall apart eventually. That's just what's gonna happen. We're already on our way to that. There's plenty of things you can do. I mean, we can
Then
start
we
with
should
reparations.
leave. Then we should leave the country, like IG said.
But nobody does leave. That's the interesting thing. Hardly any black people actually do leave.
Can't
Maybe
afford
we
it.
should.
But I'm saying if it's as bad as some say,
Can't afford it.
integration hasn't worked, and this is so off. Why haven't we left? Why haven't we just
Can't
gone?
afford it. We ain't got the money.
I don't agree with the
That's
can't
not-
afford
so-
thing because
so
during
everybody,
that,
so everybody that hasn't
Wait a
left
minute.
hasn't left because they can't afford it.
so
For the most
I'm
part,
going to say
yeah,
why I don't agree with
they
the can't
wanna
afford
leave-
it because during the
leave
great, I
because
think
they
it was the
can't
Great
afford it.
Migration. And I'll tell you why I don't agree with can't afford it. So during the Great, maybe the Great Migration may not be right, but anyway, when at some point when all the factories and all this stuff was opening up in the Midwest and in the North, you had a massive influx of black
It's
people
a great
leave the
migration.
South.
You got it.
It was okay, and move north. And they didn't have a bunch of money. They didn't have a bunch of resources.
Okay.
They just said, "Hey, we're gone. We're going. We're going to take that chance and do it." So I'm just saying that pushing back on the don't have the money.
There's a difference between moving up north and moving to across the ocean. There's a huge difference.
There's
Let me
so
just
many
say-
poor
let me-
people that come
Let me
to
just say
this
this
country.
real quick. Let me say this.
There's
real
tons of
quick.
poor people that come to this country.
I think that the biggest
There
reason why,
are.
I think the biggest reason why black people have not left here is because they believe that they are Americans. They believe that they're the truest version of Americans. And to be quite
Actually,
frank, they
we
are.
are.
We are the
so
truest.
Are we?
Hmm?
So I'm assuming you're saying that we are not Americans. And
No,
so
no. What I'm
do you
saying,
mean
no,
by that?
we are the truest. What I'm saying is that black people feel like this is our country. We're not.
A sense of
leaving.
ownership.
This is our country. We're not going to leave our
Yeah,
country.
they're not going to run.
Make
They're
it
not going to
feel
run
better.
us out of here. We own this place too.
Right. And I think that
Hold on.
that's what I think the biggest reason why other people say we shouldn't leave. I have
And
They bought into the facade.
And another reason that we a lot of us don't leave, it brings the question of where are we going to go? Well,
You can always
we don't
have
have any
discussion
roots
about
anywhere but here. Black Americans, because all that, we don't know. We have no idea where we're from. We got Africa. There's no general place, just Africa. So we have no general roots on where to go back to. And that's another reason why people don't
And
leave,
who's to
'cause there's
say
no
wherever
homeland.
But
who's to
people
say
go to-
also
but
wherever
people
we flood to?
People immigrate to countries that they have no historical
That's true.
connection to.
Right.
So maybe that's why I brought up the
That's
poor
true.
people that come to America.
Oh,
And
I'm a fan of people that come here.
Yeah, I think it's just, I guess to me, and maybe this is my optimism to some degree for America.
disgusting.
Not even for America, but for the minority population of America. I think it's time. I think really all it is a waiting game, because at some point your minority population isn't going to be your minority population anymore, and at some point you're not going to have the same imbalance of power that you have because of your population changing. At some point, I think you're going to be able to. Now they may change the rules. Don't get me wrong, and they're all about changing the rules. But I think to some degree you're going to have shifts, and I think it's just going to take time, because again, we haven't been out of this long. We're talking about our parents. We're not talking about our grandparents, great grandparents, or anything further than that. We're talking about our parents walking around today, sitting at home watching basketball or chilling, whatever they're doing, or whatever the case may be. We're not talking about a long time ago, but you're talking about something that happened for 300 to 400 years. So there's no way you can just flip a switch and everybody is just cool. Everybody's accepting of one another. Everything is fair and equal, because that's not the system that this country was built on. So it's gonna take time, and I think it's a waiting game. We would like to see it now, but that's just part of our generation. We're that microwave generation where we're like, yo, we want it right now, and we got to
That's
have
every
it.
generation.
It is. When it comes to race and civil rights, absolutely. Everybody's like, nah, we need this right now. But I think it's going to take time with those folks. So why I say we don't leave is because if we leave, we're giving up and saying, all right, you guys win, you got it. And I'm sorry, some of them haven't put in enough work to say, this is our country. And I'm talking about white folks. Like some of them have not put in enough work to be like, this is ours. It's true. They haven't done any work. They're just they're living off of the benefits of us and that their parents reaped and the wealth that their parents were able to pass down. They didn't work for that though. That's not wealth that they've grown and accumulated. That's wealth that they were given that we didn't have the opportunity to create and build and pass down to our kids.
And see, that's part of that correction that I'm talking about for white people. What they need to do to correct this. There's ways to correct it, and most of it's financial.
But they have to accept that they were wrong. And to them, and I made a joke, it was tongue in cheek, they don't feel like they did anything wrong because they're like, well, it wasn't us. It was our parents. You guys weren't slaves. And it's like, yeah, it doesn't matter. The head start that you got right now is because of slavery, because of the benefits that your grandparents, grandparents had. They had opportunities that we didn't have. And so now that we have the same opportunities, now we're starting back 3 to 4 miles in a 5 mile race, and you're like, catch up and win. It's like, well, how am I supposed to do that? You're starting with such an insurmountable head start. And I think it's just going to take time, and eventually we're going to catch up, and it's slowly, but we are going to catch up. That's why they're so scared of Mexicans coming into the country, because they're like, yo, wait a minute, y'all need to take it easy. They don't want this to happen, but it's happening regardless. That's why they don't want interracial dating and marriages, because that means you're not just getting straight white people. You're now getting a mixed race of people who look less and less like them, and that scares them. But it's a matter of time before there's nothing they can do about it.
Mexicans are coming back to Mexico. In the case of Texas. Now,
Texas,
we need Takara's original answer for, did integration work?
My original answer.
Yeah, you haven't had a chance to answer yet. I'm sorry.
Well, I did answer. I said we already answered that question.
And that's our show. I was like, no, so that's cool. Let me go to the guy on the couch then. Guy on the couch, what do you got for the third question?
All right, third question. Did integration work? JR simply says no, because America never truly put forth an effort to integrate people. Back to you.
That was quick. So I think
right. And it's because of those social injustices. Again, like that's the baseline problem here that sprouted all of these other things, all of these, inequities that we are dealing with now, racial bias. I mean, and it affects us in nearly every aspect of our lives, and this is why we are still playing catch up, nearly 70 years after, the integration of schools. I mean, like, it was in a lifetime, but I just hate that we are kind of normalizing that the process being so slow is okay. It's not okay.
Yeah,
it's not.
That's something that is
okay.
Wholly unacceptable to me, and it should be wholly unacceptable, honestly, to anybody who really wants things to be even. I think that a lot of people don't want an even playing field. I think that the idea of equality is great, but equity will be better. And I also think that when it comes to in generalizing, of course, when it comes to white people in America, they believe that making things equal or equitable would in some way take away from them or take away an advantage from them. And then I guess in a way it would take away from the advantage in terms of them getting things prior to, us getting something or something to that effect. But in general, it would make everything even. And if you have an advantage in anything, race aside, competition aside, are you going to be willing to give that away in the name of competition, or in this case, in the name of the freedoms and liberties of other people? And that's something that I don't think it should be a hard decision to make, but I'm not on that side of the coin. Greg, go ahead.
Well, that's when all this so-called patriotism talk goes into play for me, because if you care about the country, then you would want that. but you obviously don't care about the country. You care about you and your own selfish needs. And like I said, and the real problem is they keep on telling Black people to fix a problem that, one, we didn't cause, and two, we have no control over. I understand that there's a whole thing called personal responsibility, but you can only do so much, with what you can only do things with what you have. We don't have the capabilities to fix all the things that are wrong. The people that do have the capabilities are white people. So if they would like this problem fixed, then perhaps they should chip in more. Then you don't have to hear about the bitching. If you help fix it, then we can all get on the same playing field. And that's just what it is to me. Go ahead, Jay.
If white people are racist, generally speaking, if this is a racist country, which I mean, it's easy to make that argument, but if it is a racist country, white people don't care, they don't want to see us even, then respectfully, what sense does it make to call on white people to fix it for us? If they're racist, they're not going to fix it. So we must, even though it may not be fair, it's not fair.
No, what I'm saying is,
just real quick.
But
if they're not going to fix it, we must figure out how to do it ourselves, right or wrong.
Fair
Systemic
enough.
racism
What
and
I'm saying
structural racism prevents us from doing that. We don't have the ability.
This is what I would say, but we have examples of people. See, if we look at it as a group thing and say the group must do better, then yes, I agree with you, because I don't even know how you specify stuff for a group to do better, but we know individuals that do better. And if individual Black people, individual Black families do better, the Black community does better.
What I'm saying is,
I agree.
Their complaints are that we aren't doing enough. Right?
Why are we worried about what they're saying? We have to fix it.
We're not doing enough to do what? We're not doing enough to do what?
Their complaints are, we need to fix our communities, right? That's one of their complaints. We can agree upon that, correct?
Yes, they do say that.
Now,
often.
If their complaint is that, and they want us to fix it, and if they research and realize what the problem is from their people, and if they want this fixed, then I suggest that if they want that complaint to go and they want this fixed, then they should chip in. That's the point I'm making. If not, then they need to shut up.
I don't need them to chip in. I just need them to get out of the way. There's a difference.
Well,
like I need them to stay out of the way. Like, because
Maurice,
I agree. I agree.
Get out the way. Let us do our thing. That's what I'm saying is they're the reason why that this is being held up. Now they can't complain about something happening, and they're the cause of the happenings. Is what I'm saying.
So
that's like
how
saying,
do you?
Why do you all these mice in the kitchen and you're continuously leaving the back door open? That's essentially what's happening here.
I don't know, man. I think when we talk about systemic racism, there's tons of different terms. So let's say historical racism. We're talking about stuff that happened in the past. And
that stuff is happening now.
But you will grant that we also do bring up historical racism and things that happened in the past and how that affects today. I think that even was brought up. I think that was used in something we were talking about earlier. That stuff we can't change. I think there's an interesting tie-in with the whole integration discussion is if we do better as individually, part of that probably involves integrating. But then the second component of that is then coming back into our communities.
My dude, listen to me. In last year, there was an integrated couple that tried to sell their home. The Black woman had a pictures of her family and they gave them a price. Then they took those pictures down and put up the pictures of her husband's family and the value went up $100,000. Mm-hmm. These are the things I'm talking about.
Is that to be fixed? Norm or is that an antidote? Is that the norm or is that define the entire experience and possibility?
Bias. It's bias. It's implicit bias that is based on social conditioning.
True.
These are things that happen. And these are the things that I'm talking about that they need to fix. Like there's no, I would love to hear that company explain to me the reason why the value jumped $100,000 without having race involved.
There is no explanation because race is the base reason. But that's again, I think that's two separate things. I think
no, but I'm just saying that's just a
but,
small piece of what I'm talking about. Those kinds of things. If they see that, then them as a whole should be like, that's not the America that I want. This should be equal. But nobody cares. Nobody cares but us. But they don't want to hear us. But they don't want to hear us complain about that. And if you don't want to hear us complain about it, then maybe you should fix it. That's the point I'm making.
That's not.
If you don't want the complaints, maybe you make the things even so you don't hear us complaining.
It's unrealistic to expect. It's unrealistic, I think, to expect a racist person to fix a racist issue. So
Fair enough.
So then where you
Fair
go?
enough. I've got no rebuttal for that, sir.
You go to Aruba. Okay, sorry, Maurice. Go ahead. You have the last word, and I'll go ahead and end it.
Oh boy, I got nothing.
Okay, I'm back.
His last word was that.
No, hey, I'd like to thank everybody. Once again, I'm gonna shout it out to www.blackadvancement.com, where you can go to our website and you can check out a couple of things, such as the Black Advancement's Female Voice Zoomcast featuring people like Takara. Hey, now you know you're an also people from a Hollywood Zoomcast, such as Greg. You know what it is. And also, we have a donations tab. I mean, we're a nonprofit. Come on, give. Anyway, another thing that we have on our website that's really neat is the Black People You Should Know. One of the ones we want to highlight for this episode, I should say, of the Black Advancement is John Stewart Rock. He was born in 1825 through 1866. He was a multifaceted, brilliant man, and he did a lot of things. Among them was being one of the first practicing Black lawyers in the nation. And last, but certainly not least, actually, quite honestly, first is our solutions section. Basically, this organization was started not only to discuss these type of problems, but to also have solutions to them. And I know solutions is a big word. I know solutions doesn't mean everything, but if everybody does what they can do in order to combat some of these issues, maybe these issues won't be issues anymore. So that's some of the things that we like to do. If you'd like to see some of the issues that we are trying to combat, you can go to our solutions tab. And if you see something that you're interested in, you can reach out to us at our contact us section and see if you can get a part of it. We just, we're starting to ramp up more and more on that as more people are getting vaccinated. So hopefully we can get back into everything before the end of, by the summer, actually, to be quite honest. With all that said, thank you for watching. You can follow us on Facebook at The Black Advancement. You can go to Twitter at Black Advancement, which is BLK Advancement on Twitter. You can go to IG at The Black Advancement or our website, which again is www.blackadvancement.com. Until next time, Black people, peace in advance. Shout out to Hampton University. You know what it is. Anybody else got shout outs?
No.
Nah,